there. I didn't see you. I was just catching up on some light reading. Speaking of which, do you ever feel like the buzz of a book is just gone? Like that sparkle zing you once felt just isn't there anymore? Well, do I have the video for you. Fret not, today we'll be dusting off our bookshelves and diving into some true tested tips to bust that reading slump. So let's roll up our sleeves, put on our biggest smiles, and dust those bookshelves off. Was that intro potentially one of the dumbest things I've ever made? Yeah, it was. Hi, hello, welcome back to another week, another video. This week I wanted to talk less about specific recommendations and more about what to do when you find yourself in a reading slump, because we've all been there. We've all been there. We've all felt the joy leach from our bodies as we go to pick up a book and it doesn't spark that joy and excitement and little dopamine hit. So I'm going to talk about some techniques to help you get out of that, because life's too short to not enjoy your hobbies, right? This may sound counterintuitive to the theme of the video, and if you're here, it's probably because you're in a reading slump and you don't want to be anymore. But my first tip is to just give yourself a break. We get this idea and concept that reading is like this morally superior hobby because it's intellectual and it's literature and it's highbrow and it's society. No, reading is supposed to be fun. Unless you are reading for like work or school, reading should be fun. No hate at all to people who read self-help books, but I hate the idea that reading is supposed to be this morally superior hobby where you only read to better yourself, you only read self-help or non-fiction books, you only read to learn, there's no enjoyment in it. I think that's such a load of crap. Reading is supposed to be fun. If it's not fun, give yourself a break. Give yourself some time and some space to not put pressure on yourself to read, because half the time when you're forcing yourself to do something, it's not fun. There's a reason why no one wants to do washing, because it's not fun and we have to force it. It's something we have to do, not something we want to do. So give yourself some time and some space. Give yourself the breathing room to miss reading and let that void grow. The void. Give into the void, children. That's the key, I think, to getting that joy back, is missing it, right? So give yourself a break, give yourself some time, stop being so hard on yourself, and if you're in a slump, just let yourself be in a slump. The second tip is the literal opposite to the first tip, which is to just use the brute force method. That is, set it as a task every day, include it as part of your routine. You have to read for 10 minutes every day. You have to read 10 pages every day. Treat it like brushing your teeth or having your morning coffee or whatever non-negotiable in your routine you have. Set aside time in your day where you have to do it. Maybe it's 10 minutes in the morning while you're getting ready for work or school or your day or whatever, and you set aside 10-15 minutes in your schedule that you have to read, and you put your phone somewhere away that you can't reach it, you turn the TV off, you turn the music off, you just force yourself to get through those 10 minutes or get through those 10 pages. Take your book with you if you commute to work on a train or a bus. Take your book with you and don't bring your headphones. So your choice is to either like stare into the abyss or to read your book. Sometimes I think simply creating the habit, if you're trying to force yourself to do something that once brought you joy that doesn't bring you joy anymore, sometimes just the act of making yourself have the space and time in your daily routine allows the joy to come back in. It's almost like once you've done the thing, you can then enjoy the thing. Now, I will preface by saying that this technique probably won't work for those of us who have the spicy brain tendencies. With my brain with ADHD, there is no simply just doing something, because when my brain decides it doesn't want to do something, it straight up, it's not doing it. So I will acknowledge that spicy brain tendencies can make the brute force method a little trickier. My next tip is gonna be easy dopamine wins, and this tip specifically is for the neurospicy folks out there. What am I if not like 3 rowdy raccoons in a trench coat, just like scrounging through the rubbish of life to try and get some serotonin and dopamine. My brain just, all it wants is dopamine. And so sometimes you can trick your little stupid monkey brain into doing something by giving it some easy wins. And this is by reading ridiculously short books that you can whiz through and then get the satisfaction of moving something from your TBR to your read pile, or ticking it off on Goodreads, or adding it to your little journal. However you track what you read, the little yum 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 nom 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 dopamine that you get from ticking off something, that's what life's about, folks. So following are some very quick, very easy reads that I would recommend for your easy dopamine wins. So I'm not going to give you really in-depth plot summaries or really in-depth on my thoughts about these books. I'm just going to kind of blitz through them with a very, very quick plot summary. This is How to Win the Time War. Very, very short chapters, like the actual internal pages, the text is quite big. This is a sci-fi absurdist novel, I guess. It's about 2 people who fall in love through time and space by leaving each other romance letters. The chapters are POV chapters, and you sort of get little snippets of action, but the actual bulk of the story is mainly told through the letters that they write back and forth. Very quick, very easy. You can blitz through this in an hour or 2. My next easy dopamine win is Diary of a Void. This is a Japanese book by a Japanese author. It is essentially about a woman who works in a corporate office, and she gets sick and tired of having to do all the mundane tasks that the men at her work don't have to do, like cleaning the coffee machine, making the coffee. So one day she just decides she's gonna pretend that she's pregnant to get out of doing all these tasks. So silly, so funny. Again, very, very short. You can get through this. Very short, a very big text. Super easy win you can get over in an afternoon. The next one is one that I talked about in my last video about female rage, and that is The Yellow Wallpaper. I realized after, it's been a hot minute since I read this book, and I realized after I did this video that this book, which is 54 pages, is actually not just The Yellow Wallpaper. It's 3 different stories. So this is tiny. I mean, you could easily get through this in one sitting and feel fantastic, because technically you're knocking over 3 stories in one. The next book I'm going to recommend is I'm a Fan. This one, very short, very cool cover, very pink. I love pink, as you can probably tell. This is short, kind of non-linear vignettes. It's almost like a collection of short stories, but it is about the same people. It's about our protagonist, the man she wants to be with, and the woman she's obsessed with. That's what she calls them. And they're basically just unhinged, non-linear chapters about her obsessing about these 2 people. It's very easy to get through. And it has some pretty cool themes about race and gender, so there's that as well. The next one I'm going to talk about is another Japanese book by a Japanese author. This is about Kiko, who works at a convenience store, as you may have guessed. Kiko, I think, very obviously has like undiagnosed spicy brain tendencies, and it's essentially about her just wanting to be left alone and wanting to live her life, work at the convenience store, not have to deal with men, and have her parents leave her alone. And it's just silly, absurd, quick. You can knock this over in an afternoon. The last book I'm going to talk about, if you haven't heard of this book, you may be living under a rock. Animal Farm by George Orwell. I actually can't talk about how much I love this book. It's tiny, it's short, but far out, it packs a punch with the content of this book. If you haven't read this, this is a classic. I'm not someone who's like, oh, you must read the greats, you must read the classics. You must read this. This is fabulous. It's funny. It's clever. It's still so relevant today. This is brilliant. Tiny. You can knock this over in an afternoon. The next tip I want to talk about is going back to old favorites. I was in a big, I can't even say reading slump, because I was reading, but I went through this wellness girly era where all I was reading was nonfiction. Again, nothing wrong with that, but I wasn't reading for pleasure. I was reading purely to like improve myself with every waking second. and I wasn't getting any enjoyment out of reading. And in 2020, we all know what happened in 2020, one of my best friends suggested ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses. I was not on TikTok or deeply ingrained in the online book culture at that point, so I had no idea what ACOTAR was. Can you imagine a world where I didn't know what ACOTAR was? I can't. And I started reading this book on like 3 p.m. on a Sunday, and I stayed up till 4 a.m. that night finishing it. I was hooked, and that was genuinely, honestly, the beginning of my reading journey as I know it now. So things like that, going back to your old favorites, things that you maybe potentially loved as a kid, like Percy Jackson, those sorts of things, The Hunger Games, things, Twilight even, things that you remember really sparking a love of reading in you when you read them for the first time. I feel like there's also something comforting about reading a book where you know where the plot is going. I think it does the same thing for your brain that like comfort TV shows do. You aren't concerned about where the plot is going, what's going to happen to the characters, because you already know. So you can just immerse yourself in the world, immerse yourself in the story, and just strap in for the ride. The next tip is maybe potentially slightly controversial. Oh, the controversy! And that is to try a brand new genre. Sometimes doing something you hate can solidify doing the thing you love. Give me like 17 chapters of world building and like an 800-page book. I can't think of anything worse. However, sometimes, as I said, doing something that you hate can only enhance the feelings of doing the thing you love. So, if you are someone who usually reads romance, try some stuffy historical fiction. Try some sci-fi. Try something that you never would normally read, because A, you might surprise yourself and find something that you absolutely love, and B, hating the thing that you're reading can maybe trick your brain into wanting and like pining for something that you know you will love. The next tip I'm going to say is join a book club. The app Fable is fantastic for this. It's a whole community of book clubs that is entirely online. You don't ever need, so if you're someone who lives in a rural area and it's not easy for you to get places, or if you have kids or disabilities that make it difficult for you to leave the house, Fable is incredible. I have some very close friends of mine that run a book club on Fable. It's called Girls on Tour. I will leave a link to their YouTube and all of their things down below so you can check that out if you did want. But sometimes having both the encouragement of other people to keep reading and also taking away the choice. Sometimes I find I get so paralyzed, especially because I have a book buying addiction and my TBR list is less of a list and more of several waist-high piles in my apartment. Sometimes having the choice taken away from you, having a book picked for you, just forces you to read. But also, if you are incredibly competitive like I am, the thought of not finishing a book by the end of the month, no, I'd rather set myself on fire. But also, you can start your own. If you have a group of friends that you know are all like, oh, I wish I was reading more, I wish I was reading more, start a book club with them. Start a group chat. As I said, you don't have to meet physically. We have so many incredible tools nowadays to facilitate non-in-person meetings. Like, we all essentially went to school and work for like 2 years without leaving the house. Zoom, Teams, Skype, all of these things make not having to leave your house so accessible. Start your own book club. The last tip I want to talk about is to try young adult. I think young adult is fantastic in that it's obviously written for people who are younger, so the language is oftentimes a lot more accessible than some of the, I guess, stuffy, harder to comprehend language used in like lit fic is. Usually the plots are incredibly addictive and you never want to put them down. There are absolutely fantastic murder mystery series within the young adult fiction. Holly Jackson's A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is one of the best ones I can think of. The Inheritance Games series is another sort of mystery young adult series that is absolutely fantastic. The Scythe series by Neil Shusterman is another fantastic one. There are so many great young adult series. Go to your local bookshop. As someone who used to work in a bookshop, there is nothing the sales assistants love more than getting to yap about their favorite books. If you are someone who struggles with social interactions and the idea of talking to another human being makes you want to curl up in a ball and die, Goodreads is an amazing resource to use for that. They have recommendations for particular books and what other readers have enjoyed if they've enjoyed this. They have the list function where people have created like their own lists of hundreds of books of great young adult fiction. The options on Goodreads are endless, but also I can almost pretty much guarantee your local bookshop seller would be absolutely thrilled to help you pick something. So that pretty much about sums up my tips and tricks for getting out of a reading slump. If you are watching this and currently in a reading slump, my condolences. So I hope this helped. If you have any other tips or tricks that you know of for breaking a reading slump, leave it in the comments. Let's start a little chain of ideas because being in a reading slump sucks. Reading should be fun. Reading should be fun. Don't forget that. Thank you so much for watching though. Don't forget to like, subscribe, don't leave a mean comment or I will cry, and I will see you next week. Bye!